Hey everyone, this one is going to be a great one as we discuss about a new demo that just recently dropped last week. Hey everyone, I hope you're well, playing on and making the games that you all love. You're joining me, your host, Max Pears, where we get to talk and break down all things game and level design related, as well as discuss and talk to industry veterans. So thank you all very much for joining me, and I do hope that you're having a great day, morning, evening, or night. Always appreciate your time that you give to listening to the podcast. And I hope in that you get to learn and gain something in this exchange. So as I said, I appreciate it. Before we get into it though, we have to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, which is Outstandly.com. Outstandly.com is a great place where you can get your art and animations for your games outsourced to in terms to make even better. If you're watching the YouTube video right now, you'll see that they do an absolute range of different styles and variety and do what's best that's for your game, with a great team behind it that are super friendly, as well as able to just sit down and listen to what your vision is. So if you're looking to create a game and make it even better, I cannot recommend checking out Outstandly enough. And if you do want to use them, then make sure that you use the promo code Level Design Lobby or mention that you come from this show, and they will give you not only either a discount but actually additional work on top, whether that be an extra animation or maybe some UI assets. All of that will be there right for you as long as you mention that you've come from today's podcast. Thank you very much to Outstandly.com. A link of them will be in the description down below. And thank you so much. And now let's get back to the show. So this one is, well, I thought I was going to release Kingdom Hearts number 3, part 2, but something big dropped, and I thought, as many of you know, I'm not always good at keeping and releasing to latest trends, so I thought, well, actually, this is a chance to discuss it, because I've just recently finished, and for those of you who don't know what I'm hinting at, it's going to be that of Final Fantasy VII, the Remake's demo. Now this did drop on PlayStation. I'm not sure if it dropped on Xbox, but I think it was just PlayStation. I could be wrong. Please correct me if I am wrong. So yeah, this has just happened. It's recently just come out. For those of you who don't know, Final Fantasy VII is considered to be one of the greatest games of all time. I'm a huge fan of it. Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, the spin-off on the PSP, is one of my all-time favorite games. So obviously a big fan of this universe. And yeah, this one's going to be a very good one, I think, in terms of the game when it releases. And it comes out, I think, is it April? April this year, so not long now. So I'll be excited when this game drops. But yeah, no, it's a remake. Final Fantasy VII had a huge impact on the overall gaming industry and is definitely, like I said, referred to as one of the greatest games, or in top 50 for sure, all-time greatest games. So to see how they're remaking it, I think is very, very cool, especially as we spoke about Resident Evil 2 the end of last year and how that came about and came to be. So that's always cool to see how things are getting remade. And I'm kind of torn with this. I know some people don't like games to be remade. They prefer new IPs, and I completely understand. I think the reason that I don't mind certain games being remade, especially like old ones like Final Fantasy VII, Resident Evil 2, that's the same generation back in the original PlayStation, is because they're such a big part of the gaming history. And you know, there's even further ones going back, Mega Man, DuckTales, all of these, you know, other great games that came out prior. And the only way you can really play them is either an emulator or having the original console. So to see what we're doing in that, and such the huge success of how Capcom remade Resident Evil 2, I'm pretty sure Resident Evil 3 will be fantastic. So yeah, I think it's important for the history of gaming is what I'm referring to when I discuss this. But yeah, without that further ado, let's actually jump into this and discuss it. So I'm just going to be discussing anything from the actual demo itself. So if you don't want any spoilers, I completely understand. but this is going to be just talking about the demo. I'm sure many of you have already played it, if not watched it already. So it's just about that. It is the first mission in which you go to Macro Reactor, was it 1 or 7? And go essentially destroy that. Now, the first thing we'll talk about is obviously the graphics. This looks beautiful. It is a extremely beautiful game. I don't think anyone can deny that at all. It is just, oh God, I hate that I'm saying this word, but breathtaking. God, that's so lame. But it is that. I think the art is so beautiful, and to see this and think about, I don't know if anyone remembers when the film Advent Children dropped, and people were like, whoa, this is so amazing, because that again was so incredibly realistic. The style was great, and to see this probably look very similar, if not just either slightly better or worse, and to see that we're playing this is great. I think just the detail in these characters. Now, I've got a soft spot for how the original polygonal characters looked. I think it's a shame we didn't see more of that art style. I think it actually looked great. And, you know, we didn't Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VIII, and Resident Evil 2. Like, they all went different directions, but I loved that style of them. I thought it looked truly, like, great, and a great, you know, like, I'm saying great so much, let me change that up. But for the time, it was definitely a cool kind of visual style to it. So yeah, now we've kind of focused a bit more on the art. Let's actually talk about the level design. Now, I want to talk about something that we might not be talking about all the time, and that is loot placement. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that we have a lot of talks about how to try lead the player in certain directions, and then if they choose to go against that, against the current, then they will find some loot. And loot placement tends to be like that. But I want to talk about something in a bit more detail about loot placement. It's something that I've been learning about. If you play this game, you'll find that either the loot are in crates that you can destroy, or they're just in chests randomly in an alley. What I mean by randomly in an alley is, right, think about, you know, we talk about making believable spaces all the time with level design. What I'm talking about with this is you need to think about the same with how the props are. Now, this will go back and forth between level design and environment art as well. I think that communication is always key in creating believable spaces. And with that said, these loot crates are kind of just placed at a dead end, and they're the only thing there. I mean the actual chests themselves, not the actual crates that you can smash. I just mean the ones you interact with. And when we talk about this, that's important to me and important to others as well, because of the fact that you as a designer, when you're selling your spaces, it should make contextual sense, right? It should be that of clear that why is this chest here? Think about it. If you're carrying something valuable that either you or work are going to need, you know, say you're in charge of work has told you to place some valuable stuff later that they will come back to, you're not going to leave it right by itself. You're going to put it in a place that makes logical sense, whether that's near other chests, near some sort of loading area, this sort of thing. So what I'm getting at when I'm talking about the placements here with Final Fantasy VII, and this is just me nitpicking, but I do think it's important to talk about, because I know JRPGs and RPGs in general kind of don't think about this stuff as much, which is because a lot of their level design isn't the selling point, it's the systems within the levels that are more of the appealing and engaging part of the games. But when you look at, say, something, compare it to that of Deus Ex or I've been banging on about Resident Evil 2, but it makes sense some of where you find these pickups, these valuable containers, right? Because of the fact that it makes logical sense that if I'm going to a loading bay, that's probably where I'm going to find some places to pick up items, compared to just a random alleyway that someone's left something valuable there. So I just wanted to tell this to all of you so you have something to think about when you're filling up your level with loot. First, think about what that loot is. Not every loot container will be the same. So I don't know if people saw my block out of the art gallery. There was that of ammo as well as of just general loot and health pickups. And I was trying to think where to put them. So I put like valuable loot by underneath the reception's desk as well as in the meeting rooms. And I also put first aid kits around there. The reason for that is because the fact that I knew first aid kits would be near a member of staff. That makes sense, because that way someone can always go approach a member of staff if something's wrong and they will go deal with it because they're responsible for that area. But ammo, I would try put near where enemies have been or are going. So, for example, whether that be where they're packing up their art the art that they're stealing, or being near where a bunch of enemies are, just because that's where they would go and load their weaponry. So again, just a small thing. I'm not saying I'm perfect on this. This is something that I'm still learning myself, because, again, it's easy to just put something down a little bit of an alleyway because it's appealing, right? Oh, we want the player to go right, but if we go left, you get rewarded. That's fine. That's perfect. Very good level design. I'm just saying, to help sell the story, the environment, your world, you should think of the context of, one, what the loot is, and two, does it make sense that someone would leave anything valuable there? If you break into someone's house or apartments, please don't. But if you did and you were a robber, you'd come and break in because that's where people's valuables are. But if I was walking down, for example, a hallway where apartments are, it's very rare that someone's going to leave something valuable there unless they were moving, right? That's my point here. So again, just a small tip, but a tip that I think will all help you grow as better level designers overall. So yeah, that's just one little nitpick that I'm going through with Far Cry 7. The next is obviously the combat. The combat has changed drastically, right? So much since that of the original Far Cry 7, which is turn-based. This one's kind of more action-orientated, similar to that of Kingdom Hearts and Crisis Core. And I thought this was overall with how they switched over the ATB or ATP. Sorry guys, I'm making it sound like I never understood this. ATB, sorry. How they used that, combining with because it builds up off your chaining of attacks, I thought was really smart. The translation between the different of building up through time and your hits on the original to now building up from your combos was really smart. I also liked how it gave you power to use your command menu as well, which is really just, like I said, a good switch around on how originally was to how it makes sense now. So I respect that. I really do. I think it's super duper important. Now, from that as well, they also had different styles of fighting, whether that be, I think it was called with Cloud's type, which was, I think it was called like Punisher, and the other one began with an O, punishment mode, and that, which is changing up how he attacks, whether it be fast or heavy attacks. And I really liked this. I did. I think that it made you understand that enemies are weaker to certain moves and certain types as well, which I thought was really important to you learning. So it's not just about the basics of tapping a certain button, but by you again studying your opponent, understanding what works. It reminds me of that of Persona. When you use a special spell, it breaks the opponent and like stuns them and allows you to build up more. So I think this was just another way to do this, which again I really thought was super duper smart. I liked that one a lot, so I enjoyed that. Not only that, we also have different members of the party which have different abilities too. Cloud can obviously get up and personal with his Buster Sword versus that of Barrett with his gun arm, which allows him to take out enemies at range. And again, different ones have different views. I like how you had to charge up Barrett's gun in order for him to use his overcharge like special shot, which is really cool. And again, it makes you strategize. if I want to switch over to Barrett because I need to take control in order to focus on these long-range enemies which are doing more damage to me, or if I want to be kind of more of a tank character with Cloud and get up close and personal, I thought this was all good. And I can only imagine what else you're going to have with the varying members of this party from the original Final Fantasy VII, Yuffie, Vincent, Tifa, Aerith, Red, Cid, Katsith, and all of them. I'm sure they're going to have a different set of skills as well. So yeah, I think that's going to be a great thing to see how that combines. Now, what's interesting as well is when you're switching over from the turn-based, which would teleport you to this kind of battle arena, versus now this other type of space, it makes you have to think about this more in terms of level design, right? Because when you think of something like Devil May Cry, which has a phenomenal combat, close quarter combat system, or God of War, they use what some people refer to as fishbowls. You know, it's a tank in which that you have to make sure there isn't any random objects getting in the way of the player, so the player can have free reign in the combat, not get caught anything or cause any frustration. The only way that they feel that they can fail is because of that, of user error themselves. So they have to think about that in this one as well, which I like. I did enjoy seeing how they've adapted this. Another thing that I think is going to be interesting moving forward is, if you play the original Final Fantasy VII, this kind of section in the game here, this actually only is a kind of corridor level design from the original, because you don't kind of go into open world till you leave Midgar. So I felt there was a reason for that, because the levels were very corridor-esque in this game. You didn't really have much agency as a player. You just moved forward. You know, you didn't have multiple paths to go and explore, which personally I would have liked to have, just to make the space feel much more open. Because in terms of their environments, they give the illusion of space very well, that you're in these big reactors or the train station, but there's a lot of rails stopping you from exploring, right? Because, as I said, you don't need to go there, so they're not going to build that path for you. What I would have liked to have seen is the chance to explore more of this, because one of the things we just mentioned earlier with the loot was context, right? Context. So there's a point here where there's these laser traps, right? Which is a fun little breakup of pacing, as well as a great way to challenge the player differently than just throwing enemies at it. But I was like, why are there lasers here? You know, there is a cargo container in it, some generators, some wires, but I never felt like, okay, but what were the lasers there to protect? You know, it makes sense when you're robbing a bank, because that's the security system, right? That's there stopping you from taking any precious diamonds, if we're talking about this, okay? But here, I was like, what is it protecting? It just looks like a generator / storage room. So why is that needing this high security laser traps? Again, this is me being nitpicky, right? And I'm not trying to put anything down, because I loved this game. Please don't think this is me, you know, being like, oh, this game is awful. It's not. There's some great things about it. I'm extremely hyped for this game. What I'm bringing to you, though, team, is something for you to learn about, right? They could have put different types of traps. That's fine. Like, they could have done the whole Steam traps that we've seen in many games, Batman, Deus Ex, Half-Life, all of that, because it's in a kind of Steam area, right? So that would have been more contextually smart, right? Versus that of high security lasers. That's all I'm saying, is when you're putting these elements together, because it's hard, like, I can't talk about what I was working on right now, but I had to have a discussion with Art about what made sense contextually and architecturally in the area versus that of what matched with the gameplay. And we figured out what to do in the end, but those conversations come up so often when you're making a level. And it's always good to discuss these things, whether it be with your artist, with gameplay design, with your leads, your directors, all of this. But you need someone, you need to think, does this make sense here? Why is this valuable? If you're going to stick like turrets here, why is that? Is it because people shouldn't be here? Like I would have liked to have seen in this level more, because it's a lot of corridors and storage areas. I would have loved to have seen kind of people where they worked. What did the engineers need in terms of space to make these macro reactors? All of this. So again, just contextualization of your space is so valuable and so important to your gameplay and puzzles as well. Again, I'm just hounding on about this because I think it's important for you to all take away from this. And what else do we have to talk about this? I'm very excited for this game. There's some great stuff to see in this world. I love the universe of Final Fantasy VII, so there's always a lot to do from there. The pacing of this level was very well done. I'll say that. Like we just talked about the lasers doing different types of pace. Near the end, it's a timer. Timers can be really friggin' hard to pull off. I'll say working on Division in the virus zone, we had a timer to find all these viruses. And it's a hard thing to pull off, and it sometimes can just be something that frustrates players. But this one did well. I really like the use of that. The reason you do it is because it switches things up, right? Versus that of the leisurely stroll which you get to explore. Timers make the player feel they have to run and adds that sense of urgency. So it's great again because let's talk about why they added a timer to it as well. One was for the mission, obviously the story. They've just destroyed a reactor. We need to get out of here. Cool, works for the story. But we're also backtracking, right? And my feeling on backtracking, this is just my personal feeling. This doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. This is just what I like to do when I'm creating levels that you have to backtrack in. Is the fact that when you're going back through that space, you come at it from a different angle. That's why it's important to have your local landmarks in your level. But when you're seeing it from a different angle, your perspective changes, you reveal new information that they might not have seen or might have passed. But because they're coming back the exact same way, when you're adding a timer, you don't feel that you have time to look and be like, oh, we're back here again, because your objective is just to run. So again, I think that's a great way to tackle if you have to do a space in which players explore. I think that this is a great way to take the minds of the players off and allow them to focus and keep them immersed in the objective rather than understanding that they're seeing the same space over again. So I think that's a really smart move on the designers there. Really well done. I think we're going to start to wrap this one up. Just 20 minutes now into this episode. And just want to say again, I'm excited for this. Do you know what I was really interested in on the choice was for the Buster Sword? Now, this is just me saying this as, again, a fan of this universe. If anyone's played Crisis Core, they did a massive overhaul design of the Buster Sword. The actual Buster Sword had a gold hilt compared to the old classic one. And it also had these markings and etchings around the two kind of circular slots where you put your materia. And I really liked that design of number 7 Crisis Core. So in the redesign in this one, they actually kept the more kind of grungy metal hilt, but they kept the carvings of that on the blade itself. So just small details, but again, for me, it means a lot. Just because I'm, like I said, a fan of this franchise with 7. But overall, I just have very nice things to say about it. I extremely am hyped for this game. If you haven't, please do go check it out. I mentioned it in in the last essential reading list, so do go check that out, peeps, to talk about this. And I hope that you feel you've learned some level design tips. Like I said, this was me just breaking down the level design. So let's talk about it. Just one more thing. Keep in mind that of Kat. Always appreciate Kat's feedback because she told me to make sure to try to summarize before I end an episode. So shout out to you, Kat, as always, my friend. Okay, so thing is contextualize your loot. what is that loot, in terms of think about it, what is it, and why is it there, and why would it be there? So that needs to make sense. Second thing on this one is, man, what I'm forgetting my actual second point here. Oh yeah, give players agency. Just breaking it up by just choosing left or right and still leading to the same outcome can make the player feel that they are more engaged rather than it feeling like a corridor. The next point from that was of, man, why am I forgetting this? We literally just spoke about all this stuff. God, my memory's going and I'm worried. We then spoke about that of contextualizing the actual space with your gameplay devices, whether that be the security beams or what the space was actually used for. As we spoke about, there's a lot of kind of storage rooms in this area. I would have loved to have seen more kind of what the engineers used to work on when creating these macro generators. And then finally, timers. Using timers can help change up the feeling and pace of your levels, and also helps with avoiding kind of making the area feel the same when you're backtracking as a player. So those are the big summaries. As I said, I really enjoyed this. Go check it out. I love Final Fantasy VII. And that's where we're going to end it here. If you do want more level design tips, then I use and leave bite-sized ones on my Twitter, @MaxPairs. If you want to help support this and bring on more of the overall discussion and want feedback on your levels, then please head over to patreon.com/leveldesignlobby. Any questions, you can email into the show at leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. All right, everyone, take it easy, and I'll catch you all next time.